A new enlistment day is underway in Venezuela as the population volunteers to defend its homeland. In Colombia, the 33 soldiers held by residents of the municipalities of El Retorno in the department of Guavire have been released. And the Jordanian Armed Forces, in collaboration with the World Health Organization, have welcomed a new group of 19 children from the Gaza Strip. Hello and welcome to From the South. My name is Belén de los Santos. I'm from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. And we were saying it at the beginning, it's a new enlistment day in Venezuela as the government has summoned the people to join forces against U.S. military threats. People are going and heading to squares once again and other enlistment points to enroll themselves and get ready to defend their homeland. To go deeper into this topic and to really understand what this means, we welcome now International Studies Professor Danny Shaw. Danny, it's a pleasure to have you here with us in From the South as usual.
Good morning, Belén. Thank you for the invite.
So, Danny, you've been following, of course, the latest developments between the U.S. and its new escalation against the region. How do you evaluate this response from the Venezuelan people?
The Venezuelan people have every right to defend their sovereignty. This has nothing to do with a war on drugs, as the Trump regime would want us to believe. This has everything to do with a war on Venezuela, a war on all of South America's sovereignty. The war on drugs, with the fall of the Soviet Union, became the new convenient ideological smokescreen and excuse for U.S. intervention. So much of the world's cocaine, something like 90%, comes from Colombia, where the United States has 9 military bases as well as 3 drug enforcement agency centers. But as Hugo Chavez told us about a generation ago, it's the DEA and it's the CIA, those who pretend to combat drugs, that are actually behind this nearly $1 trillion international cocaine economy.
Now, Danny, from an international studies perspective, there's a lot that has been said regarding how this discourse that the U.S. is trying to enforce regarding the alleged war on drugs, how does this really relate to what is happening in the United States? So how are you looking at this scenario from what is happening to the Trump administration at this moment?
What's very cynical and hypocritical, they would try to use this war on drugs as an excuse to make war on other lands, because the truth is we're dying at home here in the United States. We do suffer from an opioid epidemic that's been going on now for almost a generation. An average of 200,000 Americans lose their lives every year, and overwhelmingly it's from overdoses, from opioids, from heroin, and of course fentanyl. This has nothing to do with Nicolas Maduro. This has nothing to do with Venezuela, but Trump, as the demagogue in chief and the scapegoater in chief, they're very good at deflecting blame, not assuming any blame. If we want to understand the role of drugs in the United States, it's the #1 consumer, not just of cocaine and illegal drugs, but also of all of the quote-unquote legal drugs, the antidepressants, the anti-anxiety medications. So we live in a culture consumed in violence and consumed in drugs, and this is a moment for us as a nation, as American people, to look deep within, to ask ourselves, where does this pandemic, this drug pandemic, come from? And it doesn't come from Venezuela, it doesn't come from China, it doesn't come from Mexico. That's just a way for the U.S. foreign policy establishment and the State Department to continue to go after their international geopolitical rivals.
Now, of course, this military threats in the Caribbean Sea is really a new development in the last weeks, and there's been a lot of alarm, of course, from the countries in the Caribbean, in South America, regarding to what this means. You were saying, of course, this discourse of the war on drugs is just a pretext that is being used, but how should we really understand that deployment, and also how should these governments response to this? Is unity the way? Is this collaboration that we are seeing between different countries the way to go? How are you looking at what is maybe to come in the coming weeks?
This is an egregious threat. Up until now, it's been more of a shadow war or a quiet war or a hybrid war against the Venezuelan people. This is a huge escalation, sending 4 of the U.S.'s top warships, thousands and thousands of sailors and Marines. This represents a very grave threat. We've seen a history of how many interventions, how many invasions and occupations in the hemisphere by the U.S. Government. The world is watching very closely. They know that Russia is completely bogged down with the proxy NATO-U.S. war against them using the Ukrainian people. They know Iran is on their back heels right now. And they know Venezuela is the key piece to the multipolar project throughout the world. It being the spearhead of the Bolivarian momentum of the quote-unquote pink tide in the late 1990s. That legacy is still there, and they want to do everything they can to thwart that legacy to make sure that Venezuela cannot team up with Beijing and Moscow and Tehran and in Havana. So that's what this represents. And these colonial bullies know no bounds. We see the colonial Holocaust playing out in Gaza every day. We see what they're doing, occupying Haiti, turning U.S. guns against the Haitian masses. And now they're trying to inflict more instability in Venezuela. So, of course, the Venezuelan people are going to mobilize. Some 5 million Bolivarian militia members have been called up and are standing guard on the nation's frontiers and borders to defend their self-determination, and correctly so.
Thank you so much, Danny, for giving us, of course, your perspective to continue understanding not just what is happening today in Venezuela, but also just understanding the deeper roots and deeper causes of this escalation that the U.S. has brought upon the region. Thank you, Danny, for joining us once again in From the South.
Thank you, Belén.
That was Danny Show, Professor of International Studies. We continue with more information on this topic. President Nicolás Maduro called on the Venezuelan people to join the Bolivarian national militias, as we were saying, this amid a militarist campaign against Latin America and the Caribbean headed by the United States. But what are the militias? The following report has the answer.
The Bolivarian militia is the 5th component of the Bolivarian National Armed Forces, FANB. It is a special corps organized by the Venezuelan state and made up of the people who, organized, trained, and armed, are meant to support the FANB in the integral defense of the country's independence and sovereignty. Its mission is to register, organize, equip, train, and prepare the people for its contribution to the national security at all levels of the territorial defense system. The Bolivarian National Militia was created during the presidency of Hugo Chavez, who established the cornerstone of the Bolivarian Revolution, the Civic Military Union. In 2008, the organic law of the FANB recognized the militia as a special corps, and in 2020, under the leadership of President Nicolás Maduro, it was formally integrated as the 5th component of the armed forces. According to official data, the Bolivarian National Militia has 5 million men and women distributed across 15,751 popular integral defense bases, with more than 600,000 militia patrols operating throughout the country. The militia is present in 5,336 communities through the so-called peace quadrants, a political territorial division where all state security institutions are coordinated, including firefighters and civil protection. Together with the Bolivarian National Armed Forces, the militia has been fundamental in defeating destabilization plans and invasion attempts promoted by the Venezuelan far-right in complicity with the U.S. government, such as the so-called Battle of the Bridges in 2019 or Operation Gideon in 2020, consolidating national sovereignty and showing the importance of the civic military union in maintaining stability and peace in Venezuela.
And we continue on topic because the Venezuelan ambassador to the United Nations, Samuel Moncada, condemned on Thursday the violations by the United States government of the Latin America and the Caribbean's territorial sovereignty. Moncada accused Washington of seeking to undermine the peace and sovereignty of the Venezuelan people through maneuvers aimed at destabilizing the nation. In his address at the international body, the Venezuelan representative reaffirmed his country's commitment to the preservation of peace and self-determination of the peoples of Latin America and the Caribbean, and also accused Washington of violating the United Nations Charter. As we were saying, Samuel Moncada in his address also made reference to the actions taken together with the government of Colombia to protect the sovereignty of both countries and to fight drug trafficking without the intervention of the United States.
Very interesting question, because we need coordination with Colombia, and fortunately, if you see the news from Colombia today, the president of Colombia has stated that he is also mobilizing Colombian and Venezuelan troops to the same place on the border, because that is the only way, coordinated. If one country does it on its own, without coordination with its neighbor, it seems an aggressive action, or it would not have the desired effects. But the two presidents have said that in coordination, working on the border, and we want it to be a border of peace and economic prosperity, in coordination, the danger of drug trafficking will be really controlled.
And Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro led on Thursday the closing ceremony of the Second Revolutionary Special Operations Course. The event took place in the Macarao parish in Caracas and brought together more than 1,000 members of the Bolivarian National Armed Forces who completed an intensive training course for the protection and tranquility of the nation against any foreign aggression. And we continue following the events in Venezuela. Now live, we go to our correspondent in Caracas, Bruno Falsi. Hello, Bruno. Thank you for joining us once again. Please tell us how this day is developing there in Caracas with this new Enlistment Day.
Hello, Belén. We are still here in the Cuartel de la Montaña, in the capital of Venezuela, Caracas, here in a very big community called 23 of January, where people are still coming since early in the morning. As you can see, many people are still coming to answer the call of the President Nicolás Maduro of this Enlistment Day, another Enlistment Day, after the last weekend with many working class population enlisted. Thousands of people answered this call in the last weekend, and now thousands again are coming to enlist to show the national unity of this country against any provocation, any menacing of the United States. Here is one of these enlistment centers. There are thousands of these in all the country. There are almost 1,000 of these in all the country. And the people, as you can see, in complete peace and very organized and tranquility, they are answered this call of defend their nation against any kind of menacing or a future military invasion. They will fight to the last. They say they will fight to the last to defend their nation. They will use arms if necessary to defend their peace, to defend their democracy, to defend the sovereignty of their nation that is against menacing by United States. As I was saying before, it's important to explain you how all of this started. It started up with a false accusation of the United States, accusing Venezuela of being part of the international traffic of drugs, and the government and their leader, Nicolás Maduro, of being the head of this criminal organization. Accusation without proofs. They didn't show any kind of documents. They just said, and they now start to menace Venezuela of an invasion. It's another communication war against Venezuela. But people here are very conscious of their rights, of their revolution, and they show with this national mobilization of this national enlistment day they are ready to defend their nation against this new provocation. And the government of Venezuela answered different for the United States. The government of Venezuela answered with documents showing United Nations document that showed the root of international narcotics, and Venezuela isn't part of that. So Venezuela is having many supports in all the world, as Brazil and Mexico show their support, China and Russia and many other governments are starting to say they are against any kind of attacks against Venezuela, because the South American continent, the Latin American continent is a continent of peace. They don't want any kind of troops in this continent. Now we go back with Belén in the studio in La Habana.
Thank you so much, Bruno. It's always such a pleasure to have your report from site, from what is happening there in Caracas. Such an important day, as well as we were seeing all the people heading towards those significant points as the mountain barracks in Caracas. So we will be continue to join Bruno throughout the day, but for now we have a short break coming up. First, remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. And we'll be right back, so stay with us. Colombia, 33 soldiers were released after being held by residents of the municipality of El Retorno in the department of Guavire. Defense Minister Pedro Sanchez described the incident as a kidnapping by people in civilian clothing who rioted and obstructed public duty. He also thanked the Ombudsman's Office and the United Nations mission in Colombia for their help in freeing the personnel. The official also reminded that almost $5,000 are being offered for information leading to the identification of those who committed this crime. On Sunday, while carrying out an operation against the Central General Staff, the soldiers were prevented from leaving the town by the residents of Nueva York. And Colombia's President Gustavo Petro is set to announce an increase in the coverage and amount of financial assistance that vulnerable elderly people will receive. During the event, a new initiative will be launched with the aim of benefiting more than 3 million senior citizens with limited resources. The so-called Solidarity Pillar seeks to guarantee a basic monthly income for elderly people living in poverty and will gradually replace the Colombia Mayor program without affecting its current beneficiaries, according to the Department of Social Prosperity. The basic solidarity income is expected to provide for 3,100,000 elderly people living in extreme poverty or vulnerability. And we continue with other topics because increasing insecurity in some of Costa Rica's major tourist destinations is causing concern among local businesses, government authorities, and the population as well. According to a survey, executives in the sector, which accounts for nearly 8% of the national gross domestic product and generates thousands of direct and indirect jobs, are experiencing growing fear about the impact of violence on the country's image as a safe destination. The Costa Rican Tourism Institute reported that it is responding to this situation by reinforcing the presence of the tourist police in areas such as Tamarindo, Playa Panamá, Cahuita, Santa Teresa, and Jacó. The institution also allocated millions to the Costa Rican Red Cross to strengthen beach safety. And in Argentina, a report that was carried out in different parts of the country revealed the situation of vulnerability of the inhabitants of poor neighborhoods across the nation. A study carried out by the Civil Association for Equality and Justice and La Poderosa organization is in 9 poor neighborhoods in different parts of the country has shown that over 40% of its inhabitants attend community kitchens to feed themselves. More than 70% require some state economic assistance, and over 80% have inadequate access to basic services. In addition to warning about overcrowded conditions, the final report shows the various environmental problems affecting the neighborhoods, most of them linked to the proximity to sources of contamination, such as water courses in poor condition, garbage dams, or sewage drains. And in other news, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum has welcomed the International Federation of Association Football, FIFA, its president Gianni Infantino, to the National Palace as part of the working tour ahead of the 2026 FIFA World Cup, which will be held in Mexico, the United States, and Canada. During the meeting, Sheinbaum highlighted that Mexico will have the honor of hosting the tournament's opening ceremony at the Azteca Stadium on June 11th of 2026, marking a historic event by becoming the first country to host 3 World Cups. With Infantino's visit to the National Palace, FIFA reaffirms Mexico's role as a key host of the championship, where 13 matches will be played in Mexico City, Guadalajara, and Monterrey. And now we have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English. There you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverages, and much more. Follow our page and activate notifications to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. We continue with more information. In this case, we go to Palestine, where health authorities have confirmed that more than 70 civilians were killed in the last 24 hours alone as part of Israel's ongoing genocide in the Gaza Strip. Another 22 civilians lost their lives and 203 were injured just by attempting to receive humanitarian aid. This highlighting, of course, the serious risks that they face every day. Hospital records show that more than 317 people have died from starvation and malnutrition, this including 121 children. Furthermore, a statement details that since Israel resumed its aggression on March 18th, more than 11,000 people have died and another 47,225 have been injured. Meanwhile, the Jordanian armed forces, in collaboration with the World Health Organization, have welcomed a new group of 19 sick children from the Gaza Strip who will receive treatment in Jordanian hospitals. This is the 10th group to be evacuated since humanitarian operations began on March 4th. This action brings the total number of evacuees to 518, including 153 pediatric patients and 365 of their companions. The arrival took place through the King Hussein crossing, where Jordanian military and medical personnel welcomed the children and their parents. And 2 Lebanese soldiers were killed and 1 was injured in an Israeli attack on Nakura, a town in southern Lebanon. The incident occurred while soldiers were inspecting the explosive-equipped drone shortly after Israeli occupation forces bombed southern towns as well as the highlands of Habur. On the same day, it was reported that an Israeli helicopter crashed while attempting to drop a bomb on an excavator in the area. These attacks add to the series of violations by Israel of the Declaration of Cessation of Hostilities, which took effect on November 27th of last year. continue with other topics. The International Via Pontica Kite Festival returns for the 5th consecutive year to the beaches of Barbara on the Bulgarian Black Sea coast. This event, which follows the ancient migration route of birds, attracts thousands of local and international visitors who enjoyed impressive giant kite shapes of animals and aerial acrobatics. This year, the festival will take place in 6 locations, promising an energetic celebration full of nature, art, and community. Visitors can enjoy creative workshops, live music, and shows that promote the protection of birds and their habitats until September 7th. And the 7th International Book Fair for university students will be held in Mexico. This until August 31st. The Exhibition and Conference Center of the National Autonomous University of Mexico is hosting this literary event, whose slogan this year is Spanish, the language of culture and science, in order to highlight the importance of this language throughout the world. There will be free workshops, presentations, forums, and talks during the conference, and speakers from the National Institute of Anthropology and History will showcase over 300 titles. In addition, the University of Chile is the guest of honor this year, whose presence seeks to strengthen transdisciplinary dialogue and academic relations between the two countries. And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok as well. For Telesur English, my name is Belén de los Santos. Thank you for watching.